Hello, hello. We are live. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. If you're new, my name is Brian Bender. I am the owner of a few different companies and this Facebook group, Superpowers for Entrepreneurs. You might be listening to this on the podcast or consuming this after the fact. But if you are joining me live, welcome, welcome. If you are consuming this after the fact and watching the replay, also welcome. If you're brand new to my environment, my ecosystem, welcome as well. So today you read the title, but we're going to dive into how to be a better leader. Subtitle, how to constantly inspire your team, your clients, and of course, your family. So I want to preface this thing by saying there's a lot of leadership books out there, okay? And throughout this training, I'm actually going to name a bunch of them. Maybe I'll just try to keep it simple and stick to one or two. But the point is, what I'm really going to do today is give you a little bit of background. I'm going to give you my experience with leadership. And yes, I will quote the books when needed. Okay, so let's dive in. I got a couple of notes here. I didn't make a presentation thing, and that's okay. But I just had a couple of bullet points to keep me on track, because if you guys have been watching my stuff for a while, you kind of know that I like to take a topic, riff for a while, and sometimes we can go down these rabbit holes, and I'm going to stay on track today. So that said, if there are questions, I am not going to look at them until the very end. So if you're following along on Facebook, you can still drop the questions in the comments. I will get to it afterwards. So let me jump in and we'll jam here. So, okay. For those of you guys that don't know, I owned a micro gym for 8 years. Started in my garage, Cinderella story type thing, outgrew the space, rented a space, figured out some cool ways to market it, blew that thing up again, doubled in size. Then I had this entire collaborative health company where it wasn't just a gym, it was nutritionist, body fat testing, chiro, physical therapy, massage, the whole 9 yards. Okay. And we had some success fairly early, some of it to my detriment. That's for a different show. This one's about leadership. And so I want to keep it to that. And I went through a lot of growing pains trying to ascend the ladder from solopreneur to CEO. And it was really by necessity. My record was 13 personal training sessions, 1 hour personal training sessions in a row, just drinking protein drinks and stuff in between. And the next day wasn't that much better. I think it was like 9 sessions. At the same time, I'm wearing all the hats, doing all the marketing, the sales, still cleaning the floors at this point, right? So by necessity, I had to build a team, or I was going to die, first of all, but more importantly, caused a bunch of problems with my relationships, almost got divorced, had to go through therapy and all this stuff. So I had to learn to be a leader, and I had to learn it the hard way. I burned through some staff members. Now, that said, I had a core group of staff that stayed with me for the whole long run. Okay. And using those lessons, now I have other companies, and building my teams is a whole lot easier because I've learned these lessons. So yeah, I burned through a lot of staff members, was kind of an asshole when I didn't need to be, and figured out my own leadership style. So I'm going to kind of share that with you today. So you guys have seen The Wheel of Life, and, Zig made one, Tony Robbins has made one. There's been a bunch of high performance or mindset people that have made their versions of The Wheel of Life. Chances are, if you're in this group, you've seen mine. Okay. I like to see leadership as this holistic thing. And by holistic, I mean, every single one of the 8 categories requires you to be somewhat of a leader. Now, if you really get to know me, I always emphasize compartmentalization. So, time that you spend with your family, you shouldn't really be thinking about your business, your marketing strategy, your clients, or leading your team. On the same note, when you're leading a meeting with your uh, client success team, probably shouldn't be thinking about what little Johnny got into over the weekend and blah, 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 right? But I see entrepreneurial growth and personal growth as sort of the same trajectory, right? And that is my philosophy. It's grow the human and grow the business as a side benefit of that. And of course, there's a bunch of tactics and strategies within the business itself, but my unique approach is actually growing that entrepreneur. Okay. So with the Wheel of Life, if you've gone through my exercise and you've ranked each category on a scale of 1 to 10, and then you shaded that in, you get this weird looking shape. You kind of know where you stand and what you need to focus on. So in the Wheel of Life, your business is only one piece of that pie, right? So if it's low and you put all your energy into it, may or may not work. But remember that the business is just a vehicle to get us to this ideal outcome. Okay. So if you've mapped your ideal outcome, you have this vision in mind. This is where I start with everybody. You get this vision of where you want to grow. Okay. So that could be ultimate, in 100 years, 50 years. We usually whittle that thing down. So if you make a lifestyle vision using the Wheel of Life, what you want to do and accomplish, it's usually good to work backwards from 100 years old and kind of fill in the boxes that way. If you have that ultimate outcome, it's actually pretty easy to whittle down the daily habits and actions that you need to take to get there. I hear this one all the time. Ask somebody what their goals are and they say, I want to be a billionaire in 5 years. And I say, okay, well, what's your plan to get there? Well, maybe I'll win the lottery or something. It's not always that answer, but one mentor I work with in one of my high-level masterminds, he is on track to be a billionaire. And I think he's going to be a billionaire in the next 5 years, he said, something like that. And he has it literally mapped out down to the week what he needs to accomplish. And he's a producer. He's crushing it. He does multiple 7 figures across different businesses. So it's a real thing for him to do that. But that is one of his ideal outcomes. It's not mine, right? Mine is more values based. So lifestyle design, using my businesses to serve what I get to do with my kids, how I get to contribute later on in life, and actually how I spend my time. Okay. So until you come up with your own personal philosophy, the leadership discussion is kind of like a moot point, because if you don't know what your ideal outcome is, if you haven't set that for yourself, then you have no idea what this thing is that you're trying to drive. You don't know where the ship is pointing. You have no North Star. Okay. So, all right, let's assume that you know exactly where you're trying to go in all 8 categories, ultimately, before you die, and you know exactly what your legacy is going to be. If you don't know, it's going to be tough for you to lead. So take a seat back, take a couple of hours, map this thing out. Okay. Design it for yourself. Or, like I said, none of this stuff is going to make any sense. Okay. The first requirement for how to lead. Okay. Actually, I'm not going to get to that yet. I want to preface this a little bit. Yes, I went through employee after employee. I've been a captain on a hockey team, right? I have done all this stuff in groups. I try to stay quiet. I really, really do. Okay. Which may be a shock to you because I go live in our group and in different places at different times. I put out a lot of content. I'm not actually as extroverted as you might think, but I'm also not that introverted if you did meet me in a group environment. If you want to know, I'm ENTP, and my E is literally 1% past the 50% mark. So it's like a lot of E's are like all the way over on the other side. I'm like barely an E. Okay. So I'm like, I could go either way depending on the day. Okay, that said, I tend to be gravitational to people even when I try not to be. Okay. Purposely keep my mouth shut. Purposely. And then all of a sudden, people seem to gravitate to me. They want my opinion. If I do nothing, say nothing, and just act, people still follow me. Why? I don't know. I know a little bit. But a lot of this natural leadership stuff that I was just kind of born with after reading some of the things, some of the top books on leadership, I understand why that works so well. So I'm not going to go into how to be a natural leader. I'm going to go into some more, some high level strategy stuff and then a little bit of tactics. So, all right, this first thing, now that we're circling back, this is actually above all else. Leading yourself is a prerequisite to being able to lead any other person. Okay. So if you are obese and you give somebody fitness or nutrition advice, they will not listen to you because you're obese. So you have not done a good job of leading yourself in order to lead others. Okay. One of my favorites is the small business consultant that got his MBA and never actually ran a business. Okay. Now, these types of consultants are great for specific things. So if I want to run an agile system or a Scrum design in my SaaS company, and a consultant will do exactly that for me that never owned a business, that's fine because that's a specific thing. I'm talking about these small business coaches and consultants that are kind of doing what I'm doing, but they don't have a background in it, right? So it's impossible for them to lead because they don't eat their own dog food. They have no idea what it feels like. So you have to lead yourself first. So if I'm going to sit here and tell you about how to design a morning routine or what to say to a staff member or a client that needs to be led in a certain direction, I'm not going to just throw out things that I read in the book this morning or went to college for. It's boots on the ground stuff that I'm literally implementing myself first. So when I was a gym owner and I was writing the exercise programming for personal training clients and groups, I wasn't just copy and pasting programs, right? I'm learning all the science and then I'm trying it myself first before I actually recommend anything. Okay. So you have to lead yourself and you got to be consistent with it. Another sort of analogy for this is analogous to cheating. So if you're going to run a 1 mile run, okay, and it's an out and back, and you're alone and nobody else is looking, do you cross all the way over that line before you come back, or do you cut it a little bit short? Do you kick that golf ball out of the rough when nobody's looking, right? So if you don't have this mastered where you are leading yourself with the integrity that you want everybody else to have, it's just not going to work. It's impossible. It doesn't make sense. There's a mismatch, and call it what you will, but they can feel it, right? They're just not going to listen to you as much. So as I'm speaking on this, literally in the last week, I redesigned not the morning routine itself, but the order of the morning routine. And designing morning routines is actually one of the things that I give to my high-performing entrepreneurs. We have to customize it. But this particular order is new. So I'm trying it before I actually make any suggestions, if that makes sense. But I need to know what the differences are. So that is literally the most important thing that I'm about to talk about, because everything else is like, you can implement it right away. But if you're not real, if you're not authentic, and if you're not doing it yourself, it's just not going to work. Okay. So a couple of the questions I wrote on the post were, well, I'm going to get to all of them. I'll just go in order. So I want to talk about these roller coaster months. All right. And being a leader, adjusting your reactions to the roller coaster month is one thing, which we'll talk about in the next segment. What I want to talk about is the roller coaster months themselves right now and your perception of them. Okay. So if you're having roller coaster months, it could be for any reason. So let's talk first about the revenue roller coaster. Okay. The revenue roller coaster is pretty common for startups. It's less common the farther along you get. So if you're doing 5, 6, 700K, $1 million a month, you've hit the 7-figure mark, you got a pretty good handle usually on revenue. Great example in my gym business, knew exactly what months out of the year were going to be higher and lower, and we could actually manipulate that with different programs and offerings that we put out. So if my staff members, particularly coaches, were seeing lower volume, then it was harder for them to book personal training and nutrition services and stuff like that. I'm leading from a place of, well, we're heading into the summer, which usually means a decline in X, Y, and Z, but we have an increase in MNOP. So if you place your efforts on MNOP, you can then increase your bottom line as well. Okay, so as a leader, I know what's going to happen with the roller coaster month. Doesn't matter necessarily that it is happening. It's that I have the big picture so that I can explain that to my staff. Okay, so the way you react to it too is just as important, which brings me to my next point. I'm big on stoicism. Okay, and if you followed me for any long period of time, you know that, yeah, I love Ryan Holiday. I got the Marcus Aurelius books and Seneca and all that stuff. But the main point of stoicism is that you get to choose the way you react to any given situation. Okay. So if your dog dies, you can choose to be sad. You could choose to have a hissy fit. I just got off the phone with United Airlines after the debacle last week with the trip getting canceled. I wanted to use the credit, and then I had to pay differently for the seating arrangements for my family, which made absolutely no sense. So in the moment, I could have reacted and told the booking agent that it made no sense, but it's really not at her level. So that just would have made the situation worse. If you react to a low revenue month and you project that on the staff, they all of a sudden can sense that, oh, this leader is actually kind of fragile. And maybe my job security isn't as great as I thought it was. Maybe I should start looking for something else. But if you're just a little bit more flatline in your reactions, great month, celebrate it a little bit, really low month, don't get too pissed off. Don't burn your house down over it. You're going to be okay. But back to number one, should you really be having roller coaster months? It depends on your business. So if your business is more seasonal, yes, and that's okay. But understanding that is crucial to your ability to lead. One thing I teach all my entrepreneurs in my coaching program is something I call habit alignment. Okay. Habit alignment goes into basically everything. We take that ideal outcome that I was talking about at the beginning, using the entire wheel of life. And we say, to live as that person with that ideal outcome, are your daily habits in alignment with that? So if your ideal outcome is to be in the best shape of your life, running a $10 million a month business, the best possible relationship with your spouse, leader to your kids, and you're contributing to the greater good, meaning you're not only donating money, but you're spending time in different organizations. If that's who you want to be, and you're waking up at 10 a.m., you're angry with your staff, you're very reactionary and emotional with what's going on in the business, and more importantly, that dictates the rest of your day. So if you have a bad day at work, does it affect your home life? That's the wrong habit alignment, right? You can actually start living your life with habits exactly as you're projecting that ideal outcome to be. And we can get that ideal outcome to come a lot faster the sooner we align your habits. Habit alignment goes right along with leadership. Okay. Because if you're not showing up as the person that you say you want to be when you've designed that ideal outcome, and you're doing this repeatedly, well, that's a bad habit. And you're not going to lead effectively when you're coming from that place, when you're coming from the old you. And we all have these demons. Don't get me wrong. When I work on this stuff all the time, it's a continual work in progress. And it's, to me, the magic is focusing on the process, because then you just kind of bring yourself up. Okay, so let's talk about questions to ask yourself every single day. You keep this needle moving. You want to be a leader. Number one, does this fit my vision and my mission? Every single decision you make, every time you're leading your team, your clients, your family, does it fit my vision and my mission? That's not just according to your mission statement in your business. That's way deeper. Okay. I'm going to take my staff to lunch today. Okay. Where do you go to lunch? What fits your vision and your mission? Do you see yourself as a healthy leader who also transmutes that healthy lifestyle onto your staff members, onto your clients, and onto your family? If that's the case, you're probably not going to McDonald's. Okay. So every little decision becomes easier when you know your ultimate outcome with the whole wheel of life. Does this fit my vision and my mission is question number one. Question number two is, how do I need to show up to meet my team's needs? Okay. As a leader, if you've done the journey, like I teach, going from solopreneur and you got a CEO mindset. Okay. The question is, how do I need to show up to meet my team's needs? Okay. Now that question can actually be shifted to the individual, because if you're a CEO, you're leading a COO, you're leading a CFO, and you're not boots on the ground at all anymore, then maybe that, instead of your team's needs, that's that individual's needs. So how are you running your staff meetings? What's going on in the organization? Did some issue just happen with a client? If this issue just happened with a client that required 3 staff members to deal with it, and it was kind of a damper on things, and then you come in talking about something completely unrelated and you're not empathetic, you're not coming from a good place of leadership. People are not going to want to go to battle for you. Okay. So the last question, very, very much related, is who can I serve today? You notice that these questions aren't really, I mean, does this fit my vision and my mission is about you, but the second two are really about everybody else. Okay. That quote, leaders eat last, kind of true, right? How do I need to show up to meet my team's needs? Who can I serve today? Might be a staff member, might be a family member, could be any number of things. So I want to read to you, I said I'd give you a couple of my leadership books that I love. Of course, I love Jocko. Okay. So Jocko Willink, he wrote Extreme Ownership and a bunch of other stuff. I actually just recently bought his, he wrote a kid's book. I bought his kid's book for my kids, but I'm going to read to you an excerpt from the first book, which is Extreme Ownership. And this is, I think this actual excerpt ended up becoming the sequel to the book, which is The Dichotomy of Leadership. So I don't want you to get this confused. Book number 2 is called The Dichotomy of Leadership, but this section is literally titled The Dichotomy of Leadership, but it's in Extreme Ownership. Okay, Jocko Willink. A good leader must be confident but not cocky, courageous but not foolhardy, competitive but a gracious loser, attentive to details but not obsessed by them, strong but have endurance, a leader, not a follower, humble, not passive, aggressive but not overbearing, quiet, not silent, calm but not robotic, logical but not devoid of emotions, close with the troops but not so close that one becomes more important than another, or more important than the good of the whole team. Not so close that they forget who's in charge, able to execute extreme ownership while exercising decentralized command, A good leader has nothing to prove, but everything to prove. Now, when I was going through some times where I really needed my staff to level up, specifically when my twins were about to be born, I knew that I'd have to leave the organization. And I'm only communicating by phone and Zoom, but the whole thing's got to run without me. I read this basically every single day. Okay. I made it part of my morning routine to get it ingrained into my head, because if you were to zoom out and look at each one of those points, I could do a whole presentation with case study examples of each one of those things, probably in an entire hour. Okay. So that little excerpt is, in my opinion, just one of the best little blurbs about leadership there possibly can be, but it reminds you of all these little things. Okay. My other book recommendation on this one is Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Okay. Now, I talked a lot about the why, because once you know the why, it's literally, mine is up here on my whiteboard right now. Once you know the why, it's very, very easy to then take action, right? Taking action is more important than anything other than knowing the why, because any action leads to growth. So either your action is going to lead to success or your action leads to a learning experience. But the sooner you take action based on the ideal outcome, the sooner you actually have data so that you can implement. So, okay, looking at a couple of comments here. Kevin, welcome, Kevin. Good stuff. Can't wait to hear more. Love it. Definitely have to leave myself first and not foremost. Yeah, absolutely, Kevin, for sure. Guys, I actually stayed under 30 minutes today, which, as you regulars know, sometimes that's difficult for me. As a leader, I love the sound of my own voice. And when I'm given the floor and I don't have people talking, it's easy for me to just let the floodgates go. So I hope that was valuable to you. As just sort of a recap, I know I read that, but I wanted to go over my questions for you to ask yourself every single day. Does this fit my vision and my mission? Any decision in the organization, your family, or anything in the wheel of life, does this fit my vision and my mission? Always ask yourself that before making the next decision. How do I need to show up today to meet my team's needs, and who can I serve today? All right, guys, if you want to know more info about any of this stuff, book a call with me. That's the best way to do this. If you want to book a call, just shoot me a DM. We'll get it all scheduled. What we'll do is we'll go over what you got going on right now. Is it leadership specific, or is it something else in the weeds? What I do best is strategy. If you talk to any of my clients, I kind of connect dots that they don't see, but got a couple options for you. And it always starts with a free call with me. Usually takes between 30 and 45 minutes, depending on how deep we go. But I'd love to talk to you. So just shoot me a DM and I will get you on my calendar. Talk soon, everybody.